Right, ladies and gentlemen, people of YouTube, I wanted to also announce here, I'm feeling a bit ill, I'm a bit sick. It's just something I've had from childhood. It's not that big of a deal, but you might notice that my energy is a little bit lower. We're going to be co-viewing the LEC and the LPL finals tomorrow, if you want to check that out. This video is about, of course, the LEC 2023 Spring Group's predictions for week number 5. Also talking a little bit about how I feel about each team and where I see them strong in the context of the current meta, and a little bit of an assessment of the teams. And then finally, taking a look at my tier list for how I believe these teams should be evaluated in the consideration for winning the playoffs. I also wanted to add that I've officially launched my YamatoCannon channel. So if you're interested in some coaching, check out the link below. It is, just a startup. Your satisfaction will be my priority. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. We have Fnatic versus Mad in the first initial matchup. What did Mad show? Mad showed a lot of the similar. I think in terms of how they connect on the map and how they play around Drakes and how they play around objectives is rather sporadic. And I think that it's kind of disconnected. This is something that a lot of teams struggle with. And the main issue for me is that a lot of the decisions that support is making aren't in line with the decisions that jungle is making. And there is no kind of red line that you can kind of follow in terms of what the Mad Lions decision making is. And I feel like they're playing in a way where they rely on individual skill, but this is not a plane that they can contest some of the higher end teams on. They had the first matchup against Vitality, and I think for any team that doesn't know how to consistently set up Drakes and consistently find pressure and map control within the game, I think that, those teams are going to be the worst possible matchup against a team like Vitality, because you're going to challenge them exactly where they have their biggest strength. And when rewatching the Mad Lions games, I think just a lot of the fights that are occurring around mid lane, mispositionings, I think that the Annie Rakan targeted bans against Mad Lions are very good to deny Hilly any playmaking tools, which leaves him in a position where he's playing Nami sometimes. And I think that if you're playing the Lucian and Namis, you need to be very well coordinated as a team. And I think that currently Mad Lions' bot lane, in the current state of the game and how bot lane is, they look rather homeless. They don't know. I don't know what they should be playing. I am kind of hoping that they try to go in the direction of going like Draven Nautilus, Aphelios Nautilus, just to kind of find ways again to have some teeth. I think this is a way to find pressure for them. I think that if I want to look to Mad Lions and look at someone that is doing well, I'd say that Niski, I think his Vega performance was decent. I can see him play the Annies, the Aries. I think that the best version of Mad Lions that you can see is the one that plays around mid lane. On Fnatic's side, I think that in terms of what they showed against Astralis, I think that the first that's a series that definitely could have gone either way. Astralis versus Fnatic was a series that eventually was decided by a Nash smite. You could talk about Fnatic and the Orianna pick, right? Their draft in this series is the final game, right? They ban Yone and Silas to then pick Orianna on 4 and then to pick Mordekaiser into Malphite. So they have this full-on AP composition, because Varus is one of those champions that also, in the end, has mixed damage elements in his kit, which of course makes him very magic damage heavy. And even though Malphite, prefers to stack armor, he's still a tank in every nature. He can easily, of course, you know, just itemize magic resistance. That is not an issue for Malphite at all. He scales a little bit better because he gains damage from E and W, of course. Lets him get more armor out of armor, but he's still a tank that can easily itemize MR. And I think that's important to highlight. I don't mind the Mordekaiser that much, because in isolation, Mordekaiser against something like the Irelia, unless Irelia is monster far ahead and can only itemize magic resistance, Mordekaiser has situations in the game where ulting the Irelia can be game-breaking in a fight. So I don't think Mordekaiser is super crazy. I think Mordekaiser also has a decent lane matchup against Malphite. You know, Mordekaiser, Rumble, you can play, you know, Silas, you can play also, you know, Vladimir is also one. I still think Cannon is quite playable into Malphite, and a lot of the other tanks are playable into Malphite, right? But I think everything, it comes down to the 4-5 bans. I think if the enemy is showing Sejuani, I think that the age-old recipe for red side here is to use bans to set up for the case where enemy bans Olaf and Jax, because Olaf and Jax have been your go-to blinds. So let's say you ban you ban one, and then if Olaf is open, you ban Kled. Let's say you ban Irelia, and then if enemy bans Jax, you ban Kled, and then the enemy bans Olaf, and then let's say you play Nar, and then you 5-pick your mid laner. And I think that you have enough answers into anything that can come your way. But all in all, I think that some of the habits that Fnatic showed is still, I think that their bottom lane phase is very, you know, rough and very stiff. It is not a place where they can find, you know, opportunities. Basically, any form of windows they have bought, I feel like Astralis was consistently just finding leads. And this is something that is inherently very rough for Fnatic. I think Fnatic, the only like good thing we saw in bot was that they had like this good trade with Varus Nautilus into Lucian Nami, and maybe Varus flashes and then WQs after the Lucian with one more basic, maybe they have lethal and they get a 2v2 kill, right? But even in the Sivir Rakan game, where Astralis picked Sivir Rakan, there were circumstances where Varus actually lost sums 2v2, which is kind of a crazy thing to think when the enemy team is playing Sivir Rakan into your Nautilus Varus. Nautilus Varus are more connected to this idea of lane dominance, while Sivir Rakan inherently are picked for scaling purposes. Sadly for the Sivir Rakan here, your 4-5 was Zed Ilaoi, right? I don't mind the Ilaoi that much, right? You're trying something cheeky into Olaf, but it's just the Zed blind pick is definitely an eyesore, in my opinion. Fnatic also were heavily benefited by how Astralis approached the game, which is they consistently just try to fight every objective regardless of the state of the game, and I think this makes Astralis sharper in team fights, but Fnatic had definitely stronger draft positions. I think the value that they got from the Lissandra in both of the Lissandra games was insane in terms of the team fight compositions, very easy to execute. Jack's value was insane. Olaf value was insane. Lissandra value was insane. Lissandra value was insane. Team fighting should have been very straightforward and easy. But Fnatic even struggled in that department in terms of their setup. Because in this game one, there was a situation where they were posturing towards a Drake that eventually led to a very, very poor fight. And there was a circumstance where, plain and simple, Fnatic just executed very poorly. I'm just going to pull up this example. This is a very, very good example. Let me just show you guys this real quick. This has been a very common trend when it comes... Sorry, I don't know why this happens sometimes. So Younghoon takes a trade, and then here, all Fnatic needs to do is pay attention to one another. It's like Fnatic here, the bot lane, wants to connect and step into river and play with this space here. And then already Leona threw away his position. Jax is coming from a good angle, and Leona's going to take a beating here for free because Jax can just tether his movement towards, in regards to what Astralis is doing. Lissandra's also coming in on a TP flank, and you see her showing up right now. And all Fnatic needs to do is take their time. Well, this is something that we've seen from Razork plenty of times, is where he rushes when he should, of course, drag. So this is not quite my tempo. Razork should just take his time, take it easy. Oscarinin can tether his movement together with Yonghoon, and this Maokai ult was definitely premature. So the way this fight starts is that already you have 5 members that are quite active in the fight, and Lissandra is nowhere to be found. And this is not Lissandra's mistake, this is not Tahm or Varus' mistake. Sure, you could say that Varus shouldn't be channeling Q on max range to slow himself, right? That's sure a feedback point that you can give. But rushing this fight is definitely something that's made the situation very hard. I think that these two definitely can push her forward way harder. I think that these two don't need to be scared at all. Like, they need to be fighting all in here and basic attacking, pressuring these guys, because they just used all of their tools forward. And then maybe Tom should push her forward to eat, maybe Jax to save him, and then maybe these two can play better. But this is just what we've seen from Advian and Reckless, you know, throughout the split. So far, Varus hasn't really accomplished anything. And inherently, I highlight both of these sides because I think Maokai rushed, Jax rushed together with his Maokai, Varus and Tam, you needed to push her forward. But the fact that they needed to push her forward before Lissandra was on location is inherently something that is terrible. Another layer to all of this, right, is that Fnatic consistently find themselves in fights where they don't have ultimates, right? This is something that Astralis does so well, is the fact that they are aware of the windows they have within the game, and they try to really squeeze the most out of them. This is something that we saw already in the first game they played against G2. Whenever they had a window where they had stronger AD or something, they weren't afraid to create friction in the game. And Astralis did so in this position. There's no Lissandra ult, there's no Varus ult. So it brings us back even further if it makes sense for Fnatic in the first place to fight this at all. And here's another example of Fnatic's just poor fight selection, right? So you have a circumstance here where Fnatic now, they used Tahm Kench eat. So they used Tahm Kench eat, and Astralis do a very good job of kiting backwards, hitting the Jax in the process. I think that Oscarinin kind of throws away his position. And in this circumstance now, you have no Tahm eat, you have no Maokai ult, no Varus ult. Now is your situation to just take it easy and play time. You're kind of waiting for the enemy team to force the objective, and then hopefully you can get a favorable position towards the objective and kind of surpass that fact that you are missing key ultimates, right? Because inherently, if you're hitting Nash, even though it was more true in the past, because of how jungle changed and how little damage junglers take from Nash, inherently being in the Nash pit and taking damage from Nasher should be a disadvantage, right? But in the end, what occurs is that Fnatic push forward and they give Astralis a fight that they're very happy with. Finn, finally level 13 on his GP, pops off, and the leader just kidnapped the Maokai. As you can see, like, I don't know if you guys spotted it, I'll just highlight it. Yeah, Razork, he W's the Yon, and then he flies. Look at him. That's Ryanair right there. I say Ryanair because it's quite a shitty flight to be on. But just fundamentally, now Tahm Kench ult is coming off cooldown, Varus ult is coming off cooldown, Lissandra ult is coming off cooldown. You know, these are, I believe they actually had Lissandra ult, so I'm lying on that one. But Maokai ult is coming off cooldown, right? So that kind of blows, right? So that brings me to the first initial matchup, which is Fnatic versus Mad Lions. I think this is a very tough one to predict. Very tough one to predict because I think that both of these teams probably are fighting demons at this point in terms of what their ceiling is. I feel like Mad Lions definitely have a higher ceiling, and I think that Fnatic have relied on having superior drafts in a lot of their games, because I don't feel like Fnatic has ever been good enough to win in a appropriate manner. That might sound crazy, but I feel like it often comes down to the enemy running out of options due to a superior draft situation. If we just look back, we go down the trip, down memory lane, the match history of Fnatic, right? You have this win. This win was against Ilaoi and Zed, and the invited Lissandra, and the Olaf was doing super, super good, right? And then you have the win against G2. This was the G2 game where, for some reason, they are slamming Silas and Kisante and inviting Azir and Jax, and Azir was picked up 4-5 for Humanoid. And this was a very big draft victory, in my opinion, because you're ending up on Zeri Renata. You can't really pressure the Sivir and the Rakan, in my opinion. This was one of the better games, but still a very contentious game, because maybe in a situation where Razork doesn't steal the Nashor, maybe they could have lost that game, right? We also had the Mad Lions game, which I think speaks for itself, right? They had Olaf, Sejuani, Azir, Jinx, Braum into Kai'Sa, Nautilus, Sylas, Lee Sin, Gnar. You have this very short range all-in composition against these champions that are very good at disengaging and love it when you try to break into their sphere of influence. Very heavy melee comp against an Olaf. All in all, heavy draft victory. But even this game was a little bit contentious because Advian on the Braum was jumping on the first opportunity to push forward, and Jinx was left in isolation, right? You guys remember how that game played out. Mad Lions did find some opportunities to kill Jinx, but there was too much firepower on the Fnatic draft that allowed them to keep winning in such a game. In this one, you have a Xayah Nautilus. Xayah, I think, is a champion that is very important for Fnatic, and I'm certain that for the rest of the playoffs, they will not be allowed to play it. And they managed to get Azir on 4-5, and this was a more clean victory, right? You had the Vi outplaying Malrang, and you had Khalistan Tarek dying on level 4 gank against the Vi, right? So this was more of a more honest victory, in my opinion, but even then, Oscarinin, didn't have the best of time. And then the Team Heretics game, I think we don't talk about, because you remember this was a grueling 45-50 minute game that could have ended either way, right? All I'm saying is I don't feel from Fnatic that I've seen anything that stands out to me as real good gameplay. I think that Razork has high highs, the Humanoid has high highs. I think that definitely when Oscarinin is playing Olaf and Jax, I really like what I'm seeing. But beyond that, it's always a little bit concerning, right? I think Oscarinin has been perfectly fine. Still a big question mark for me is Fnatic's bot lane. They played back-to-back Varus games. They tried the Tahm Kench. The Tahm Kench looked horrible. They tried to play some Varus Nautilus. It is just whenever they're put up in this situation where the enemy team can deny Xayah or first pick Xayah, I feel like Fnatic run out of depth, because picking Varus can be a very good band-aid because the lane phase is so streamlined and easy, but in terms of being efficient and useful, it requires you to be very precise and leverage your advantage into things that are meaningful, because otherwise you're just masking a deeper problem. Which brings me back to the main question. It's like Mad Lions against Fnatic. Right? It's such a tough question for me. Really, really tough. Because I think that both bot lanes can be kind of non-factors. And I think that in situations where both bot lanes are non-factors, I think that benefits Hilly. I think Hilly will be allowed more freedom. And I think that benefits a player like Hilly more than it does Advian. Because I think that the action won't be centered around bot lane. It'll be more centered around how these supports can impact the map. And I think this is somewhere where Advian has struggled. I think Advian has struggled in connecting in the games when it comes to 3v3s around mid and using timings that don't completely fuck over Reckless in the games that we've seen. And also in terms of how Advian performs in the team fights. But this is a question of where the approach comes in. It's like, will Varus be picked? What will be the answer to Varus? So will Fnatic continue down this route where they just play Varus? Will then Mad Lions playing in simple play Zeri and Lulu? I would be pretty happy when they play Zeri Lulu. I think they've had some fine games there. Lucian Nami not so much. Will they go the more aggressive approach? Will they play Aphelios? Will Fnatic recognize that the Mad Lions bot lane is something that has been imprecise and maybe go in the Jinx direction? That's something that could happen too. I think all in all, in a best of 3 scenario, I think another major concern of mine in terms of what LEC, like what Fnatic have shown in their draft, is the fact that every red side game, I feel like this was such a blunder. It's like banning Annie 3 games in a row against Astralis. Annie and Cannon. It's like, if you don't play these champions on the patch, what are you doing to yourself? If you can't play Cannon and Annie on the patch, what are you doing to yourself? And Astralis have shown 0 prio on Annie. Like, not 0. They played 1 game mid and 1 game support so far. But they definitely prefer other champions. That would be my read of Astralis coming into this series. And coming into the series with locked bans already in the shape of Cannon and Annie on red, and then choosing red when you lose, is kind of alarming. Can they figure this out? Can they be the team that plays Annie themselves? Does Humanoid want to play Annie? Do they want to play it super? Maybe they just don't want to play it at all. Maybe this is something that occurs, right? I'm not so sure. But not being able to play Annie and Cannon on the patch is a big weakness. And I think that this is something that, of course, Mad Lions play. Mad Lions do play. I think in terms of draft depth, I think that Mad Lions are better off. I think that Mad are just better in that department. I think they have more draft depth. And I think that the key difference for me will just be that I think the slow gameplay around bottom side will allow Healy to connect with the game better. And I still have high hopes over what Elioe can do as a player. I'm not ready to sell him out. And after I've said all of this said and done, I think that Mad Lions probably will be the victor here. But I do admit, it'll be very close. I think that... No, I think plain and simple, I think that Mad Lions is going to win. Which leads us into a potential Mad Lions versus Astralis matchup. So I would just want to give you guys a rundown of Astralis. Like on my end, the biggest concern for me and the biggest strength of Astralis is the fact that they are willing to take every fight, and they are very, very good at just playing out mechanical situations. I think they connect very well. Younghoon and 113 and Leader, and like the team just seems to be on the same page, which is a massive advantage against Fnatic and Mad Lions right now. I think Astralis most likely will beat either one of these two teams. But the main issue that Astralis have is just their blue side drafts. Their blue side drafts are atrocious. Atrocious. Insanely bad. Insanely bad. And if we just look at it, right? So here, Astralis, okay, they went for the Yone. All right, they went for the Yone. They went 4-5. My man says, fuck this dude. We don't need to ban mid laners. no problem, I'll play Yone. Somehow they managed to piece it together. They managed to get some kills, 3v3 around mid lane. A big thing here about being able to pick Yone is the fact that the enemy had Maokai showing, which I think something that I think more teams should recognize in the current meta and the current state of things is that when you pick Sejuani and Maokai, you are very limited in what you can play mid lane. And I think Maokai Lissandra is a very strange pairing, right? But Lissandra has so much value here into these midi champions, short range champions that it's fine to pick, in my opinion. So they went with Yone. I think I can appreciate that, right? The enemy is showing Maokai already. Okay, you banned LeBlanc already. 1, 2, 3, no problem. Okay, I think this was one of the better versions of Astralis 1, 2, 3. And then you had this other scenario where they went Maokai, Sivirakan, where Sivirakan is picked for whatever purpose. I think they're just picking a scaling lane, and then you go for 5 and you pick Zed and Illaoi, right? And picking Zed here into what's showing is also like, it's just terrible. It's like every time we've seen an Astralis Zed spot, in my opinion, throughout this split, besides maybe against Casio, these Zed games have looked very rough. If you only look at the Zed in question, right? Because they managed to win games with Zed, but I feel like Zed was the last reason why they won. This one, Sejuani, Lucian, Nami. Here, the enemy picks Orianna. And in my mind, Irelia is very good into Orianna, right? It's like, okay, you get Irelia Sejuani, enemy blind pick Orianna, that's completely cool. But I think an approach when you play against Astralis is put yourself in that position where you set up a leader to blind pick. He seems to not be that comfortable there. Or he sets himself up in a situation where he's going to be inherently weaker. And I think leader is the most dangerous when he can counterpick. When leader can counterpick, very dangerous. So in my mind, if Astralis explore this a little bit more and they look into more ideas where they are actually allowed to go, like they can just go red side. And I think that provides them an edge. I think that their bot lane can play enough shit to be able to play anything. I think usually the advantage you get on blue side is that you either get to first pick jungle or you get to first pick bot laner, right? Or you get to first pick Annie as an example. But these are not necessarily things that Astralis needs. The main thing for me, what makes me think that Astralis has an edge over both of these two teams is gameplay related. I think that in terms of connecting and team fighting, I think that Astralis has shown more. I think in terms of leveraging strong positions in the game, I think that Astralis has shown more. Finally, there's music loud in the background, so I got distracted. And finally, I think in terms of how they connect, in terms of fighting around mid lane, I think Astralis just does this better. The main thing that is holding Astralis back, for me, is the draft. The draft identity. If they can't find a way out of that after watching the opposition play a best of 3 the day before, then it's like, yo, what the fuck is going on? And that's where my headspace is at. And considering all of these issues that I mentioned for both Fnatic, or for all 3 of these teams, Fnatic, Mad, Astralis, these have been issues that have been concurrent throughout the split. I don't expect some miraculous changes coming into these best of 3s. Because these issues that I've highlighted were there the entire time. All in all, I hope that Astralis explore to utilize red side, even though it is not the most common thing to do. Because I think that they will just be better there. I legit think they will just be better there. I think you can drop jungle in certain situations. You know? I think that you can pick top on 3, 5 pick mid, and you can create circumstances where a leader is going to excel. I just want to see more of that, because this was the strongest version we saw of Astralis. It just... another issue of theirs, right, is that when they were incentivized to pick these combo bot lanes against Vitality, so here, for example, Astralis first picked Lucian, Nami, and then he picked Sylas into Annie, which I think is inherently bad. It's like, here's you have one of those situations where the enemy is showing Annie, but it's like you're picking Sylas into Annie, bro, then you should be banning Annie if this is your answer. Just fucking remove Annie from the picture. You can't play into Annie. That's a given. I don't think Sylas is good into Annie at all. This is my take. Maybe Leader has some forbidden tech, but at least I didn't see some of it in the game, right? And then you drop jungle and you end up on Maokai, which can be considered fine, right? Here, Xayah, Nautilus, Sylas, you drop jungle again, you end up on Xin Zhao, right? Not the cleanest execution in the draft. It's like in terms of the structure, I feel like Astralis is gonna be better off on red side. That's at least my take. I think that they play enough things bot that they can explore the idea of counter picking and picking after the enemy into the enemy first pick. And I think in situations where you go red side, things are going to be good. Didn't Astralis go for Sylas to deny Maokai from Vit? I don't think that you give a shit. Sylas is not strong enough to justify that, and why would enemy want to pick Maokai on 3 here? Why would you pick Maokai on 3 here? What do you consider a good Annie counter? I think Annie is kind of OP, but I think the good picks into Annie in isolation, in terms of lane phase, are, for example, Orianna. Some of the mages are good into Annie. But the issue is, the champions that are good into Annie, Cassio can be decent too, right? A lot of the champions that are good into Annie are not good in the context of the meta, and that's why I think Annie is very strong. Right? It's like, you say Xerath is a good counter, but how can you play Xerath in the current landscape of things? Vega can be fine, yeah? Vega can be fine. It's like, a lot of long-range mages destroy Annie. But there's just so many more elements to the game. It's like, there's a lot of fighting around first Drake. There's first Herald, second Drake. You need to be useful in all of these beats. And sometimes, there's so often games are finished before you even finish one item. Before you finish 2 items. And it's like, then you're staring down the barrel of an Annie. And Annie knows that in every 2v2, every 3v3, she's going to be so much more useful than you. So, as a jungler, when I step into river and I see that I have Annie with Tibazon on mid, I'm going to be so happy and satisfied. I'm going to deny all vision from you, and whatever mage you're going to be playing is not going to be able to Q you on cooldown. Game is not 1v1. Yes, thank you, Jizu. Game is not 1v1. Because in the end, it's like, to pressure Annie, you need to play a very certain way. And you need to have certain level of information within the game. Is Gragas terrible into Annie? Can be fine. Can be okay. Can be okay. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that are flawed about this bracket. And I wouldn't be surprised if my prediction plays out wrong. You know? The other side of the bracket, SK versus G2, the main issue for me, it's like when I try to isolate and really think about what G2 does best as a team, I think that they do best when Caps is playing something that might not be the strongest laner, but has the potential to take over the game in a situation where he receives pressure from other places. I think that Caps does a very good job of, like for example in last year's playoffs, right? He was playing Kled into poor matchups, he was sometimes playing Cassio into poor matchups, but the main thing is that the team had a place to pour in the pressure that they received from bot. And I think that in the context of the G2 versus Koi series, G2 versus Koi series, right? They played 3 games of Varus. 3 games of Varus, and most of the time in my mind, if you're picking Varus and Heimerdinger, the whole point is that either you're going to be diving bot on cooldown or you're going to be pressuring in a way that forces the enemy jungle to react. And then you have your Heimerdinger roaming freely, being first into every situation on the map. Right? In this particular game, I think it's perfectly fine. You have Yasuo into Sylas. I think this looks like a pretty stock standard G2 draft to me, because it follows that same recipe. It's like in such a game, if Yasuo is strong, if Yasuo has good conditions and he can trade consistently with Sylas and can pressure forward, and he has Heimerdinger Prio, he has Pantheon that can hover with ult, I'm a super happy Yasuo. This to me fits the G2 mold, right? It was a messy game because sometimes Caps overreached in 3v3s and he died and so forth, but in the end, the game played out like a very classic G2 game, right? The follow-up, right? The follow-up here is that they went for K'Sante. They had Varus, Nautilus, Pantheon. So there's nothing really here that stands out as... It's like the only play you really have is to set up some kind of circumstance where you dive around bot. So you pick K'Sante because you don't want to die to Lissandra Lee Sin combo. But sometimes some things are not worth saving, right? In my mind, once again, if you're playing the Varus and you're playing the Nautilus, I feel like there needs to be a clear location where you want to pour that pressure into in order for that champion to reach a point in the game that is going to be like hyperbolic and win out the game. The issue with this G2 draft is that time is not on their side and they are heavily pressured to create friction in the bottom lane dives. And it's not an easy thing to do against Lee Sin, Lissandra, Zeri and Lulu. It's just a very tough thing to do. If we look back at this game, right? G2 vs Koi, game 2. It was at one point, right? It's like K'Sante just walks down bot just to try to make something happen. They find 2v2 kills, they're just too good. Like for me, when I'm watching this, I'm like, Caps, you're such a psychopath. This is craziness to me that you're doing this on my screen. But inherently, it's also kind of, in essence, a part of what the draft conversation is, right? I think that when the roads lead to Caps, things seem to play out better. Like G2 want to be diving bot, or they want to be setting up for pressuring a mid, and then translate that to a gameplay pattern where they can stay connected. Because I still think G2 macro-wise, mid to late game, are the best. But if they put themselves in draft situations where they don't necessarily scale so well and they don't get rewarded for transferring pressure, then they aren't that great of a team. Some of the losses in the regular split, if you guys remember, like the Malphite mid with the Jarvan jungle, and then they have this Caitlyn and Heimerdinger that are transferring pressure into mid. The enemy is stronger 3v3 mid, and then you don't have like this time horizon that is going to help you leverage G2, your advantages in the later parts of the game. All in all, I remember Jizuki said it when we were watching the co-view. I think it's a really cool move that they don't give a shit about Pantheon and they just play it again because they recognize that this really wasn't the issue. Because it really wasn't. Right? Okay. And then the final game, I need to kind of just remind me of this one. Yeah, this final game goes without saying, right? It's... Vi first pick, Cannon, Wukong, they go Varus, Ahri, Ahri, Vi, I think it's perfectly fine combo, so forth. I think the Akali was kind of whatever. But the fact that they go Jarvan here and Thresh, Like they go Graga stop into Cannon and they pick Javan here blind to set up into Sivir. And when Thresh is open, it was just all in all, it's like eventually Koi is going to be able to win this game in my mind. And this was one of those games where I remember watching it. It's like Malrang gets a lot of flack, right? But sometimes he manages to squeeze the utmost value out of the jungle being so flawed. Sometimes he goes too far and is drowning in his own disadvantage. But sometimes he is dancing around that fire and just does it so beautifully. This game, he manages to waste Ahri's time and he manages to secure bot lane in a way that doesn't let Javan E the enemy on cooldown, which is a very big deal. It's a very big deal. And this was one of those games where Wukong on paper is super far behind, but he's hitting all of the important beats, you know? And Malrang did a good job in this game, in my mind, of disrupting those lane matchups where G2 need to snowball. And then when that didn't happen, G2 just fall flat with their composition. So what I want to see from G2, and I hope that they recognize this, is just I am curious, where is the depth? Because it's been kind of a meme, right, this whole Draven ban. But they played back-to-back games of Varus, right? They're playing back-to-back games of Varus, which makes them kind of predictable. But what do you want when you pick Varus, in my mind? I either want to have a mid laner that is going to be able to manage waves together with mid jungle and dive enemy bot. Or I want to have a 3v3 around mid or around topside that really is elevated by the fact that my support can come first. And if that's not the case, and the enemy can just catch waves and play defensively, I feel like Varus loses a lot of his power. I think this is super important. Always when the game is more even and you have like a Varus against a crit ADC in the current landscape of crit and how IE works and how Navori works, Varus looks quite underwhelming unless he manages to snowball. The same thing with lethality, right? It's like you need to create circumstances where you, plain and simple, you snowball. And I think this is something that G2 need to look at. Either you need to change up how you draft bot, or if you want to continue down this Varus path, which I think they should, because that's where G2 have been successful, just make sure that mid lane and jungle have the tools to either leverage your advantage through prio, and things will be good. So basically, I want to see G2 on like the scaling junglers that can pressure invade and they get snowball situations. You know, I want to see those, or I want to see caps on the worst laners that are going to be scaling better and then dominate the game, whether it's fucking Kled mid or Casio or whatever, right? And I think things will be better. Or if you want to go down the route of playing Ahri and Wukong, I'm perfectly happy with that too, but just fucking pressure through mid and then make sure that you find the timings to dive bot. And I think the G2 can figure this out. So looking at this side of the group, it's like, I think SK looked like they did in the regular split. I don't think there's much more to say. It's like, if you want my information on SK, just take a look at the video I did the last time, because my opinion heavily remains the same. I think you deny Draven, you deny Zeri, and play into Aphelios, and you're going to have a good time. I think G2 is going to beat them. And then I think in the matchup G2 against Koi, I think with a little bit of preparation, G2 should be able to beat Koi. I think Koi have a good amount of player capacity. Right? I think the Koi players definitely have, you know, they have good individual players. But I think in the grand scheme of things, G2 have shown more. especially after looking at Koi against BDS. Now I have to remind myself a little bit. I'm trying going down a trip in like memory lane when I think of BDS. I think the main concern for me in regards to BDS and what they showed is like in the best of threes, Adam seems to be such a wild card. My man's the wildest of wild cards, which was the main concern of mine coming into BO3s. When you have players like Leader and Adam, when teams have more time to specifically prepare for you, you can definitely be at a disadvantage when you're more of a unique player. So Adam, right now it seems to be like, oh, you deny him the Olaf, and then he's going to cook up something else. Here, BDS, you know, they just slammed Olaf, and then the Rumble was picked. It went back and forth, but eventually, you know, Adam's Olaf prowess showed up big, and they dominated and won the game. SK picked Nautilus into Renata for some damn reason, and the Syndra pick from Nuke was gorgeous. It was really nice. The Syndra was fucking great. Nuke had a fantastic series. Damn, what a player Nuke was. And then we follow up. It's like my man picked Darius into Nar. Maybe you know something I don't, but this looked like a very strange Darius pick. Especially if you look at the composition, right? It's like you have Zaya, Sejuani, Cassio, Renata. You are already relatively short range, and you need to find ways to break the enemy composition. You pick Darius, and then he went this wonky build where he went Ninja Tabi into Warden's Mail, and you know, these are items that are fine into Nar, but he definitely struggled to be useful in this one, right? He was more of a passenger in terms of what was going on around him. And the crazy thing is BDS looked fucking crispy even when this was going on. It's like in the past I'd say that, oh, Adam is such an important piece in terms of how he snowballs and finds unique picks to break and shatter the enemy, and this is not something that held up too well when they played against Astralis in the best of three, but BDS just looks like a very decent and complete team. Now, if we look at the metrics that we evaluate teams by, it's like early game laning, right? Early game laning, Drake setup, Nash setup, Nash conversion, right? Fight selection. These are things that BDS showed on the weekend that they do super, super well. And I feel like in terms of any team that has had the most significant improvement, I'd say that BDS is the one. In the context of everything else that is going around them. Because G2 kind of regressed. Vitality, a lot of the similar, right? Vitality, a lot of the similar, right? It's like, oh, Bo Bo was hinting it a little bit in the Mad series, but Mad is not the toughest opponents. Astralis for Vitality, that's probably the toughest matchup for Astralis ever, because Astralis wants to fucking take every fight possible, and if you invite Vitality into a cage fight, you know, you're fighting against fucking John Jones in a cage fight, right? And those matchups are important, right? And in my mind, the biggest glow-ups are just Shio. I think Shio should be in the conversation of having the best performance as a jungler in all of playoffs. And you might be like, hey, Yamato, what about Bo? What about Bo? What about Bo? Bo played super well. Don't get me wrong. But those were dream Bo games. The Lee Sin game was a split image of a solo queue game. You start off the Lee Sin game as 1-0, and Bo is going to be the perfect player to execute. When he is ahead and all he needs to do is fight, pressure, Bo is perfect. The perfect player. But my concern with Bo is when circumstances are slower in the game, where the pacing of the game is more central around objectives and less around ganking, less around fighting. It seems like Bo tends to sometimes lose his mind a little bit. I think that the Maokai game was a very good example. I will just pull that up. I will pull that up when we talk about BDS versus Vitality specifically. BDS versus Koi, I think that was just BDS really following through on that same thing, right? Enemy picked Trundle. You guys know that I love Trundle, but picking Trundle against Zeri, Vi, Lulu when Zeri Lulu is showing is kind of crazy. Enemy went Syndra and Javan, and this is probably one of the most useless Trundles of all time. Keep in mind the context I spoke about Trundle, right? I want to see Trundle against the Scions and the fucking and the Sejuanis and so forth, and you take it easy. Crazy thing though, Shea went full tank here on Vi, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. We go back. Sorry, I clicked something. In the Javan games too, you know, Trundle was Malrang did the disruptive thing, and Javan went down to Drake on level 6 to secure it for his team. And I think that even though Adam didn't have like the best series by his standard, I think that in terms of how he showed up in the fights, I think that he was very relevant. Right? I think this game BDS did a very good job. I'll just show you guys a very nice fight that I really like. I think this is the one. Let me show you guys.
Cyclone in the midst of the pit is Mauer.
This was a very, very nice fight. BDS really showcasing the fundamentals. So they're opening through mid. All right, let me just mute this real quick. Sorry, Mediveri, you guys are beautiful voices, but I lose my concentration. So they spot the flank, which is first. And then they see the opposition crossing into bottom side. So they are aware that the enemy is contesting through bot. They're pulling out the Drake. How many times have I told you guys to pull out? The Drake goes into the Pixel. Both still won that game. Lemao was heading gold, one on CSZ. Okay, Marak, you can put this all in one message. You don't need to spam. I know it's a very quiet chat, but you don't need to ruin it. So BDS pull out the Drake. They spot the flank, right? Very important. Now they see that Cannon is crossing through the minion vision on mid. And the first reaction from their side is to push him out. Shigenda reacts by eating it away, and he's going all the way, and then they turn. And then right away, these guys are over postured, and they recognize these details in the fights. Really good scheduled. And it's interesting how Yanuk doesn't get caught in the maelstrom, and he just annihilates the opposition. Maybe Rodoveja is just too OP, guys. Thank you, Chizuki. You can do that, Chizuki. You're allowed. And this is the moment, of course, that Shigenda I got a lot of hype for. The jiggle. Bro, honestly, I sat down and taught myself this shit. And it's so much harder to do in the way he did it. Like doing this little jiggle thing. Like, I do it with 2 button presses. It's like I need to put the camera in a very specific spot, and then I click here, and then I click up. It's basically, and then from here, you can just do it in 1 click into this spot. But my man is jiggling. But the jiggle is faster? I don't know if the jiggle is faster. Is it faster? I have no clue. But my man is a madman for pulling this off. My man is jiggling like that. But anyway. BDS fundamentals when it comes to fighting, I think has been very good. I think Nuke was a very, very good surprise. A very, very nice surprise. I think Shio was also a very positive surprise. In this game, I didn't think that the draft was so good, but they just won based off of better fundamentals against a very experienced team that is Koi. The main thing for me now, BDS versus Vitality. So just to make my prediction official, like I believe that G2 is going to go all the way. Okay, I think G2 is going to go all the way. How did Nuke win early lane versus Ori that much? I have no idea. I have no idea. Looking now at Vitality versus BDS. He just traded autos while trying to dodge Casio Q, got hit. Okay. So Oriana needed to base before being able to buy item. Sugo mucho. Vitality versus BDS, I think it's a tough one to predict. I think Vitality, I think they are at... So basically, I think Kaiser's performance has been kind of iffy. That is one thing. I think that his Nautilus Qs can be better. I don't know if it's something about, you know, him warming up a little bit more. But I feel like Kaiser can definitely level up to give Upset some more teeth in the lane, based on what I've seen. Astralis is a very strong lane, right? So we take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, because against Mad Lions, they did manage to just stack waves, crash waves, dive, stack waves, crash waves, dive, right? A lot of water terms in League of Legends. Stack waves, crash waves, dive. I think that Photon is probably the top laner that has the least amount of tolerance for some of the stuff that Adam got away with in the regular split. And I think this is definitely the toughest matchup for any top laner in the league. I think that Photon, when he was playing Malphite, looked kind of iffy. Doesn't look like he wants to play this champ when he's playing this champ, I'm not going to lie. And he showed Kled into Olaf. He showed Olaf. Like, Photon has showed so much depth in terms of his play. And if you try to pull this shit like BDS did against Koi, where they picked the Scion, right? It's like, this game, it's like, sorry, this is the wrong game. BDS versus Koi. Are you doing this late invade shenanigans with Scion? But my man, you're playing against Caitlyn Anibot. You couldn't even fucking crash the wave. This is shit that you can't get away with, man. You're not allowed to do this. There's no wave. This is insanity. So shit like this, you do this to Photon. Honestly, Sion should walk to lane after red and push with them. I think that's actually a good call, Jizu. I think that's actually a good call. That's good. I like that. I like that a lot. That's very true. But the issue is, I don't know how the fuck you... Like, if you don't get level 2 from that, then it's GG. Yeah. This is horrible, right? I'm just saying, you do this shit against Vitality, you might just lose the game on the spot. Is my point. It splits the map versus Kate, so it's not that bad. Nah, it's horrible. If I'm Sion in this game, I fucking hate my life already. Bro, this is a disaster. I missed 4 melees. I'm doomed. I mean, Adam normally sacrifices himself for bot. Bro, he sacrifices himself for nothing. Well, he won the game. Yeah, okay, guys. My concern about Vitality is, I think that when it comes to the deeper stages of the game, I think that they haven't been so clean and clear cut when it comes to finishing out games and setting up around objectives. And, you know, my main concern about Vitality is like, I could see this being a team that stomps scrims so fucking hard that they never ever get to practice like the deeper parts of the game. I think most important factor for Vitality to find success, in my opinion, is make sure that you have a mid laner that you can fight 2v2 with and that you can cross on the bottom side. I think that if you put Bo in situations where you fight, you will win. If he's playing champions like Maokai, he will still put himself in situations to fight and he will lose. Even though he played it as good as possible. Just an example, okay? Mad versus Vit. My man was playing Maokai in the first game. I think Maokai is fucking OP. But my man, he's so bored. I'm telling you, he's so bored. He's the most bored ever. Like, my man's fucking calling to dive here. Bro, I don't know what dive you're seeing here. It's insanity. Okay, we got his cleanse out, but we used heal and we are so low, like. And then later, fucking Bojack. Let me just find those moments where Bojack goes supersonic. Bojack just punching this retard to level 5. This was also insanity to me, but it fucking works somehow because they one-shot Elioya here. But if Elioya flashes here, the game is over, by the way. They called dive because no cleanse Lucian? No, Lucian had cleanse. It's just a bug on spectate. Look. It's the spectate bugs. Because he's cleansing in the dive, no? Look, he cleanses in the dive. For some reason, this is bugged now. I don't know why it shows like this. And then look here. It cleanses polymorph. I had the same thought, Jizu. Like, I was like, because look, here, the fucking summoner spells are being used already. It's like, heal is popped now. Heal is popped now, and then cleanse is used. It's like some overlay delay. But anyway, it's like, okay, you're fighting this fight. I thought this was complete Psycho 2, that you are level 5 Maokai, and you're crossing into bot, right? And it's just here, if Trundle uses flash, you're just fucked. Okay, and then later, there were some situations where my man was trying to dive top when he couldn't. Okay, God bless, like, they fucked up really hard, right? It's like they killed Maokai, but they managed to defend, right? Let me see the next. There was a top dive. I think it's... I'm trying to find this fucking top dive, guys. Where's the top dive? Yeah. Jesus. What's happening, man? Well, once again, I can't blame Bo solely for this because maybe it's like, yo, we can dive top, and then it turns out we can't dive top, and it's a disaster. But my point is, we've seen games like this from Bo. I feel like whenever he's playing the weaker champ, he tries to be the stronger champ, and he's not. And then you have that contrast between him playing the series against. That was a good play from Niski. Bro, I could do this play. Good play from Niski, but it was a very easy play to do. To dodge the Maokai ult here, bro, the Maokai roots. Bro, I can take a phone call and make coffee while I dodge this ult. It's no problem. I can clear the wave every time. All in all, right? In the series where Bo completely popped off, he's playing against a jungler that wants to take the fight to the enemy jungler, but you're taking it to a Street Fighter. And I think that's the difference. So when I think of the matchup BDS versus Vitality in faster games where fighting occurs early and you have opportunities to mechanically express yourself, I think Bo is the best one in the league. When it comes to playing slower games, methodical games, around objectives, around vision control, and playing where basically whoever acts first is going to be losing, it is more important to be able to take that control. So I like BDS in the context of playing the Vi's and the Maokais and the Sejus, and I think that these champions, and when those champions are in play, I think this is where Shio can perform better than Bo. And I think that's important to highlight. I think that Bo is fantastic mechanically. But sadly, jungle as a role, there are situations where that doesn't matter. And that's just jungle. How many bad mechanical junglers have found like great success just playing Seju and Maokai? Because other attributes are important. I think in terms of Perks and Nuke, I think these are the two mid laners that have performed the best. These are the two junglers that have performed the best so far in playoffs. Mid laners. Nuke and Perks. Thorin said he's a fraud. Nuke? Yeah, it could be. It's like, the thing is, you are not an elite mid laner until you win. And then you need to win again. That's the thing. Nuke played a lot better. I think the Syndra pick was very good. I think he played good on the Syndra, played good on the Casio. I think that he really, considering how much he played Azir in the regular split, people didn't think much of him. But I think that he played very well in the playoff games. I think Shio and Nuke really covered up for the fact that Adam wasn't performing as high as usual. Nuke was the only convincing Casio in the LEC. I think that's very untrue. I think you're forgetting Caps. Nuke getting booty blasted by Perks. No, that's just not how the game works. I think that both of these mid laners are playing quite well. And I think that that's it, you know? I don't think there's more to add. In terms of bot lane, I think that I imagine that Kaiser will do better at connecting, but I think Labrov is the stronger laner. All in all, I think that this series will be quite close, but I think that Vitality will win due to having Photon in their camp. I think having Photon in your camp is going to be the big difference maker here, because I think that sometimes Adam's loose approach to the game is he's getting away with a lot. And I think that's going to be the big difference maker.
Battle cruiser operational.
Thank you very much, Tizoras, for 32 months. That is very nice of you. Thank you. Thank you so kindly. I think that Vitality is going to take this one. That's going to be my prediction. We'll be close. We'll be close because I think there are circumstances where a player like Bo will not be able to perform. And I think that's where the slower games come in, where the jungle matchup is going to be more Maokai related, Seju related, and it's going to be more about playing the game slower and more objective oriented. This is where I think that Vitality can be worse. Do you think Vitality should go 3 jungle bans? I haven't put too much thought into what they should ban and not ban. I think when they play the game slower, Upset will step up and carry the game. Could be, right? Like, Upset Zeri is definitely like a cheat code, but keep in mind, he's up against Crowny. I think Crowny has been phenomenal. And I think right now, in terms of performance, the main thing that is holding people back from it's like calling out the best performance right now. It's like Crowny has been fantastic. Crowny has been phenomenal. I think if we remove the context of all of the players from the past, right? If the league spawned today, like the day of Spring Split starting, and that's all we saw from all of these players, we would rate Hansama quite low. I think Hansama is really good. Really, really fucking good. But not being able to play Zeri, not being able to play Lucian Nami. Sure, maybe it's some shortcoming in terms of how you approach the game as a team. But it's like there are ADs that are a little bit more complete. And I feel like Upset and Crowny are the most complete ADs. Obviously, it's the winner's bias, right? But my impression of the team so far, I feel like they, you know, they have the strongest performers in their positions if you only look at playoffs. I don't think Kobe is kind of complete. Yeah, Kobe is definitely very complete. I haven't seen Kobe Zeri in a long time though. I feel people underrate Adam's sacrificial playstyle. No. We don't. I have talked about that. And I think that if he continues down the same path, that he will be punished harder for it against someone like Photon. It's like you can put whatever sticker you want on it. It's like the play they did with Sion that game when they couldn't even crash the bot wave. That is just garbage. It smells like garbage, looks like garbage. You giving it the name, the Golden Goose. Doesn't change what it is, right? But that's the beauty, right? That's the beauty of this type of a format, is that teams and players can come and go in terms of performance. And I think that to expect that G2 is going to be consistently the best on every patch, it's a big ask. It's a very, very big ask. Very, very big ask. You need to be the best on every patch. In the past, you didn't need to be the best on every patch. You needed to only be the best on the last patch. Hans destroyed Upset Zeri, bro. I think Hansama, I think when it comes to being oppressive or not in lane, I think it's very important to also put support into consideration. I think it's like Upset Hilly was by far the most oppressive bot lane that we've ever had in the history of Europe. In history of Europe, you can tell me Forgiven, you can tell me whatever. Hilly Upset 2021 was by far the most oppressive bot lane in the history of European League of Legends. But keep in mind, there's two people. There's two people there, yeah? Hilly was on fire, Upset was on fire. I don't have time right now. No. You're talking about Upset not having titles. Mate, Hansama only won one title, and it's a half title in the split that Upset didn't play. Thing is, Hansama is a fantastic player, don't get me wrong, guys. Fantastic player. And I think the only fair way to assess bot lanes is by looking at the complete package. And I think Vitality, in terms of how strong they have been in lane, I have to point to, of course, Kaiser, right? I think the Kaiser-Mickey comparison, that's where Vitality's bot lane lose out more than in the Hansama Upset comparison. Because I think you can make arguments for both. Perks and Mickey getting no recognition here. I didn't say... I said the most oppressive, right? It's Mickey and Perks were insanely good together, but for other reasons. For a lot other reasons. In terms of like squeezing every trade, every advantage and so forth, Hilly and Upset was the best. But Perks and Mickey had many talents. They were very strong laners. They had the depth of... They had a champion ocean. They were willing to play everything. They were capable of playing out everything. They were very flexible and loose and innovative. And they leveraged their game knowledge over everyone. Like they just put their game knowledge testicles on the forehead of their opposition. But okay, I think we've done a rundown of all the matchups. I think in terms of creating this usual business that we like to do, right? You guys don't see the text, but it says #1 contender. It says potential contenders. It says stars align. And then it says no way Jose. Okay? These testicle analogies are what make Yamato the GOAT. You guys are way too aggressive about this, guys. You need to chill out, man. Chill out. Relax, yeah? Number one contender. I don't think we have anyone. I don't think we have anyone. I don't think anyone is the number one contender. Someone has to be number one. It's like I don't think so. It's like right now, considering the position Vitality is in, Vitality has a very, very good shot. But it's one of those cases where G2 having more games against worse teams might be the best thing that could happen to them. And I'm not saying, oh, they sandbag to play more games. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But being forced to go through the motion of playing games and figuring out what works and what doesn't can be very beneficial. Miracle runs happen for a reason, because you figure out how you play. Billy did it in the LPL, right? It's like they figured out what worked and they figured out what doesn't, right? That can be said for every team, no? No, that really can't be said for every team. It really can't be said for every team. You think Fnatic is gonna do some fucking miracle run? No fucking way, man. No way. That's not gonna happen. It's a no way Jose. Because Fnatic have clearly showcased that they have gameplay issues that stem very, very deep. When we did, like I've done so many miracle runs. We did 2 miracle runs in Fnatic, where we went from the first best of 5 to last best of 5. We realized exactly what we wanted to pick, what we wanted to play, what fucking worked, zoom. And we were allowed to explore that in the series against XL. In the XL series, we really found ourselves. But we got pushed really, really far, man. They were about to end that game before the Gragas battle and the Yumikyu hit the Sivir and we got the fucking sweep, right? We're about to lose the series. If G2 didn't expose the Draven pick, I'm pretty sure they will run through everyone like a tank. So you mean like if they played... If they never played Draven and then played one game of Draven in playoffs, then they'll just be allowed to play Draven every game. That's a very interesting take. Nice. Okay. So potential contenders, I think inherently, right? These are the 3 teams that I can imagine winning the split. All right? BDS. What do they have going on for them? BDS, in the current meta, right? In the current meta, they look fantastic. Nuke seems to be understanding what he needs to play. Sheo in the jungle meta seems to be very flexible. I like it, right? I like it. Bot lane, Crispy, Crowny, very complete player. They seem to have very good Drake setups. Maybe in the future, when Drake setups are less relevant because Drakes get nerfed and all of a sudden BDS need to relearn and whatever, then maybe things can change. But in the current state of things and where they are positioned right now in this, right? Keep in mind, right, that the main thing for me here is the fact that looking at the playoffs, so let me pull it up, spring playoffs, you have teams that are already qualified. Vitality and BDS are either in the finals, one of them is in the finals and the other is in the 3rd place match. That already means these guys have gotten far. G2, in order to win the split, right, they need to beat everyone. BO3, BO3, back to back. right? And then they need to win best of 5 into best of 5. This is grueling. Grueling, guys. Painful. You have to play these back to back. 5 games. 5 games. 5 games. Matt almost did it. Did they almost do it? I can speak from experience, guys. I have been there and I've played finals, the finals weekend twice. G Spotted, you're so boring, man. You're not even listening to what I'm saying. I'm saying that the position that G2 is in is quite difficult. Genji did it, yes. And Genji deserve a lot of fucking praise for doing it. A lot of praise. If someone makes their way all the way through this bracket, it's insanely impressive, is what I'm saying. Very impressive. Billy did it. Yeah, they have the finals to play still, right? But they've done it to some degree, right? Legends, Billy. But things like that should be honored and praised. The contrast, right, is that by playing a lot of games, right? By playing a lot of games, you manage to create patterns and routines within the game in terms of how you draft that will make you win. So you walk into those series with an element. You walk into those BO5s by having revealed more, but sometimes revealing more is a benefit to you because you've revealed more to yourself. That is my point. Because some teams, right, it's like, look at the best of threes, okay? You look at the best of threes. You have some teams that, do you think some of these drafts they will ever do again? You think they're going to pick Orianna on 4 like this and be full AP? Or you think this is a game that will ever happen again for Fnatic? You think, for example, here, blind pick Sante into Olaf. You think he wants to play that shit ever again? Right? You think, for example, this game, BDS fucking playing for this dive bot strat when they can't even push bot. You think that will ever happen again? No. Right? So, it is helpful. It is helpful to just get the int out of the system. We managed to get push in that game though. Okay, Team BDS. I'm happy that you're the social media manager and not the head coach. Or I'm assuming Striker is not behind the account, huh? Obviously, if I'm playing Caitlyn and Annie and I have a fucking Vi and a Sion sniffing my butthole, I'm not gonna contest the wave. I'm gonna thin it out. Okay? If these guys start pushing and contesting the wave hard and they freeze, yeah, it doesn't matter that the enemy team can't dive us because we're screwed. So back to the tier list. I think this is the sequencing. I think Vitality probably has the best odds from the position that I'm seeing right now to win the LEC. I think G2 has the second best based on all of these elements. BDS, I think third best. Now, as we're going deeper into the competition, we are going to have a lot more No Way Jose's than last time. I think Mad Lions is a No Way Jose. I think SK Gaming is a No Way Jose. And I think Astralis is a No Way Jose. Koi, it's like, bro, my relationship with Koi and Trimby and fucking Comp and Larson and all of these homies, man. It's like, fuck them. But let's throw them up there, man. It's like, they have decent players. I just don't know what the fuck they're doing most of the time, man. It's such a weird situation. But it's like, they're just as much No Way Jose as Astralis. It's like, it needs to be like this then. You know? Yeah. I think that's the one, guys. That's the one. This is taking the bracket into account, right? Keep that in mind. This is taking the bracket. I need to finish, Angel. Please stop bothering me, and I will come as soon as I'm done, Angel. Yeah, but what should I do? Okay. I think this is it. Is he talking to a cat? No, I'm talking to my girlfriend. This is the one. This is the one, guys. This is the one. Any final questions, ladies and gentlemen? That's how you talk to your girlfriend, Giga Chat? What do you mean? No, this is very good. This is very good, bro. You're not right next to G2, man. Like, I'm predicting like 3-2 Vitality in the series again, like between you two, right? So it's like, that is the difference maker here, because Vitality is going to go to top of the bracket. They're going to be in the finals, right? And that's it. Can you elaborate on the Mad Lions position? Mad Lions, I think that their struggles are far too fetched for me to believe in the idea that they'll win the split. So basically, it's like, No Way Jose is like, can I imagine a world where these teams are going to win the split? No fucking way. Okay, where would you rank C9 in this list? I would probably put them here. This would be C9. I think C9 is pretty good. Where would put GG in this list? This is GG. I would think BDS G2 Vitality beat C9, but I think that it could be competitive. That's where I'm at. Right, guys, I am going to leave. Where's KT on this list? KT is #1 contender. Genji is to the moon. What the fuck? I just got here. I'm sorry, Ender. I'm sorry. You guys were cranky today in the chat. Cranky. Very cranky. Very, very cranky today, guys. Some very, very mad people in the chat. It's Friday? It is Friday. I give you a break. It happens when you don't stream every day. Guys, the LEC streams will continue. Please check out my Metafy page. Yeah? Metafy? Metafy enjoyers. If you want to schedule me, it's $100 for 1.5 hours of a good time. Probably I put like 3 hours in of work. It's exclamation mark coaching. Book your session today. Look at that. Get in there, guys. Get in there. Match of the week video. Do we end with that?
You can see the game time and stat page. It's tracking until 2018, I guess. It's a lot normal. Wait, viewers in normal black.
G2 versus Koi, that's kind of whack. Alright, it's 2 minutes 49. How you doing, Wunder?
When we screamed in December, I already knew we are good enough to be among the top of the league. It was just everyone else that was doubting.
Fucking haters. You're not showing Nook's stun here?
Some of them who didn't believe in me are obviously messaging me now, right, and congratulating me.
Early. I've been a Crowny enjoyer ever since Shaves convinced me to be a Crowny enjoyer.
We're just one man, everyone knows what to do. I guess we just click.
BDS cementing themselves in the LEC as one of the teams to beat.
Look at Adam's build on Darius. That's a Darius build right there, man. Team player. Team player.
The LEC is one of the teams to beat as they will smack down on SK.
They have a really solid foundation that they built over the split. It's definitely a team that you shouldn't take too lightly. They like this hyper carry on bot lane, Bruiser on top lane, right? Always kind of the same style. It definitely could be BDS' weakness.
I understand what they mean, since they seem to like chaos a bit more.
Bro, I just, I hear in the responses of the players that the guy who asked the questions just wanted them to flame each other, man. They hired some dude straight from WWE. I don't know, I don't remember his name in my brain. Like, I'm trying to remember his name, but I just remember his Beardface. Beardface. Bro, Beardface is always instigating. Not Chakarez.
Their games.
We don't feel the need to play topside or to do something kind of different in our playstyle to win. When the moment will come, we for sure will adapt, and it might surprise some teams for sure.
He's very powerful and he goes
Bojack is gonna douche.
It's the Bo show right now. Bo looking for a 1v1 against 113. He's going to be able to get it a little bit. There is a crescent guard. No,
113.
He wants it as much as anybody else.
I don't see how vital.
And there is Beardface, yeah.
It's gonna be really close. It's gonna be on team fighting. I don't think anyone can create a massive advantage from any laning, from top, mid, or ADC, or even jungle. It will be a great battle.
The pressure is still more on them because everyone expected them to be here, especially after getting upset. Upset has been among the best AD carries pretty much every year. In 2021, I lost to Fnatic 2-3.
And Fnatic will clean it up. It took them 5 games, but Fnatic will fight Misfits next week.
Wait, did they play Fizz? Or am I crazy? I don't remember them. Oh, it was Cannon. Okay. I was like, there was a Fizz in this game? Didn't he play Rise? He played Rise.
5 games, but Fnatic will fight Misfits next week.
I think it's very exciting to play against him again.
There's some sort of pressure. I think their support Labrov has been playing really well this split. But overall, I think all of them are having a good split and everyone is doing their part.
The stakes will